Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm going to be testing the God of War franchise on the Steam Deck. So God of War, the new one, to say it in some way, is verified. I already tested it, but we're going to show you the best settings. Then the rest of the God of War franchise is actually on PS3, PS2, and PSP. So we're going to need emulation for those. There's a link in the description on a tutorial on how to install emulators on the Steam Deck. So you can start from there if you're interested. So let's get into the first game in the franchise, God of War 1. For God of War 1 and 2, we're going to be using a PS2 emulator. The game is also available, those two, on PlayStation 3, but the emulation isn't as smooth and battery friendly as the PS2 emulator. So these are the settings for the emulator. 16:9 because 16:10 is just stretched Vulkan. Then everything like this. Rendering, we're using 2.5 times native, so we got some super sampling on the Steam Deck screen. So it's a little bit over 720p. Then the rest like this. Nothing here, nothing here. You can also enable FXAA if you want to. And that's basically it. Then on emulation, we play like this. And yeah. Here in the list of games, we got God of War 1 and 2, same settings for both of them, so let's get into it. Welcome to God of War 1. This is, again, on the PlayStation 2 emulator. It looks super crisp. We're rendering it at 1280 by 1120. One thing I forgot to mention though, pause the game, go to Options, and enable widescreen. Progressive scan as well. And that should give you basically correct widescreen, otherwise the game will be stretched. And what to say about this one, it's fantastic. It'll feel, of course, outdated at the beginning, but once you get used to it, I mean, if you play the previous God of War games, the combat will feel very limited, but trust me, as you upgrade Kratos' abilities, it'll feel like you're right at home. Battery life, we're looking at 3 hours of battery, give or take. You can see at the left side of the screen. But if you go for native PlayStation 2 resolution, that is 2 times lower than this, 2.5 times lower, looks way softer, you'll get more battery life, but I don't think it's worth doing. The cutscenes look a little, well, low resolution, which is to be expected. This game is also available on PlayStation 3 with slightly better graphics, mostly resolution and textures improved. But when you use RPCS3 for this game, it doesn't work particularly great on Steam Deck. You get slowed down very easily, so I don't recommend going for that. So just stick to the PlayStation 2 version. I think it's good enough. It's widescreen, is 1120p, so pretty high resolution, I would say. And the game controls just fine. It feels great to play. So yeah, you can relive those memories, and if you never played the previous God of War games and want to catch up, it's pretty easy to do so. Anyway, I think it's time for God of War 2, after I block the attacks from the enemies here. Ooh, I forgot about this. Jesus! So, as I was saying, it's time for God of War 2, same settings in the emulator as on this one. So we got an 1120p resolution. So let's jump into the next one. God of War 2, in my opinion, the best one in the franchise, at least from the PS2 era. And just like God of War 1, same settings, and we're using 2.5 times the PS2 resolution, so we got 1120p, looks very crisp. So I highly recommend you play at this resolution. If you go for 1080p, you'll have 60s most of the time, but as soon as you do an effect like this, it's going to drop into the 40s. Same happens with the PlayStation 3 emulated version of this game. If you play on that emulator, yeah, you got better textures, better models, better FMVs. but the performance isn't that great. You barely hold 60 in that regard. So for battery life and performance's sake, I recommend you play again on the PlayStation 2 emulator. It's a way better experience, at least in my opinion. And you get more battery life, as you can see, like 2 hours of battery. Maybe a little bit more, depends on what's going on screen. But on the PS3 emulator, it was like an hour and a half. So you get an extra 30 minutes at least. And my battery is at 84%. So I'm not even with a full battery at the moment. But what a legendary game. I love this game. I played it so much on PlayStation 2. Oof. And visually, it looks just fine. It looks like God of War 2. And also, I forgot to mention, make sure to pause the game, go into options, and enable widescreen and progressive scan. And that'll allow you to have actual 16:9 on this game. I love this part. I am the God of War. I will make you suffer. Come on, attack me. I double dare you. I love abusing the magic powers. Come on. Oof, bad idea. Oh, never mind. Still worked. He's still not down though. But again, what a great game. If you never played this and only played the remake, please do yourself a favor and play this game. It doesn't feel outdated at all. It's completely fine. And the controls are modern. The only thing that I would say is annoying about this game is that you use the right stick to dodge. That's the only thing. Otherwise, it's completely fine, looks great. Even the audio is very... It works completely fine. What else to say? Just the FMVs are a little low resolution, but that makes sense. It's an old game. Otherwise, it's a great time. Yeah, 2.5 hours of battery. So let's jump into the next one. Now we're looking at God of War Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta. These were originally PSP games, but also released with better graphics on the PlayStation 3. That's why I'm going for these ones here. They run just fine on the deck. Again, higher resolution, better graphics. It's a big jump. So for the config, we're using this. So just copy what you see here. On GPU, we're at 720 because 16:10 is just stretched. Same with audio. Well, advanced, we keep it like this. And that's basically it for Ghost of Sparta and Chains of Olympus. So let's get into Chains of Olympus first. Welcome to God of War Chains of Olympus, PlayStation 3 version. As you can see, there's no problems hitting 60 FPS. Visually is behind the other God of War games because it was a PlayStation portable game first and foremost. So higher resolution on PlayStation 3, way better textures, I gotta say. And also it supports, well, since the PlayStation 3 controller has more buttons, it feels more responsive, at least in my opinion. I tried it on the PSP emulator as well, and this is visually way superior. And we still got good battery life. It doesn't use our entire system, so that's a good thing. That means we have room to spare. And we're rendering the game at 720p. You can probably go higher, but it didn't do it because on the Steam Deck screen, it still looks good enough, at least in my opinion. I mean, just look at the GPU and CPU usage, that should tell you everything you need to know. And it's even compiling shaders in the background, so zero issues on this one. And again, superior to the PSP version in every way. So these are games that I never actually finished, so I'm excited to play this one and Ghost of Sparta from beginning to end. Because back in the day I played every single one except in this because I didn't have a PSP and I never knew they were on PlayStation 3 as well. So that was a nice surprise. Oof, the quick time event thing, man. The game just doesn't care. Come on. So Chains of Olympus, the first God of War on PlayStation Portable. You can play it just fine on Steam Deck, looks better than the original. And it's completely smooth. It's awesome. I mean, just look at it. So I think it's time to jump into Ghost of Sparta, so one sec. God of War Ghost of Sparta, again on PlayStation 3. And what to say, just like Chains of Olympus, it works just fine. Even being just a PS3 emulated thing. So instead of the PSP version, please play the PlayStation 3 version. Especially texture quality on this one is way better than on PSP. And you got basically 60 FPS, no problem. So you got nothing to worry about. Considering this was originally a PSP game, I think it looks incredible. They went above and beyond with the visuals. I still don't know how they did it, but here we are. And I would say this is closer visually to God of War 2 than the previous game. I would say it's superior in some ways to God of War 2 visually speaking. So yeah, you can play the PSP version, but this one has better graphics in general, more crisp UI as well. And I don't know, it just feels better to play than the other version. So if you have the option, please consider using the PS3 emulator instead. You also got trophy support and all that good stuff, if you care about that. And it's super smooth. I think it's actually 1080p when it comes to resolution. But of course it's 16:9, 16:10 is not supported. So if you try to do 16:10, you're going to have a stretched image. So keep that in mind. Not a big deal in my opinion. You just got some bars on the top and bottom of the screen that are very minimal. Especially if you have the OLED Steam Deck, I mean, that's a non-issue. So despite that, completely worth playing in my opinion. This is one that I want to keep playing. Again, I never played this one back in the day. I didn't know they came out on PlayStation 3 with better graphics. So I think it's a great chance to learn more about Kratos' story, plus having a lot of fun with the gameplay on this one. Visually, it's completely fine. And on the gameplay, I mean, it feels like a game that could have came out today. Gameplay is super smooth and not annoying at all. Oof, reduced to atoms. So that's Ghost of Sparta. Let's jump into the next one. God of War Ascension. This is actually a native PlayStation 3 game. And there's a few things you need to keep in mind, apart from being very hard to run. So the settings that I used are the same as on my main PC. These are the settings on CPU. On GPU, we keep it like this. Shader quality, I would like to put it on low for better performance in this case. And same with the Z call accuracy. But if I put this any lower, the game shaders are completely broken, the visuals are broken, so keep that in mind. So we gotta sacrifice performance in that regard. Then on advanced, I keep it like this. And well, what to say, I'm also using the patches, the community patches. So here we got manage game patches. And we got disable depth of field, disable MLAA, disable motion blur, skip intro, and unlock FPS. And what do we get? Well, this game uses a lot of VRAM for some reason when emulated. So sometimes the terrain doesn't completely load. In this case, it did it, but I had to play this cutscene 3 times to get the terrain to load. And as you can see, it's a complete mess. We're CPU limited. Just look at the CPU usage. Let me show you super quick. So this is one of those super demanding PS3 games to emulate. It's very hard to run, so we need a faster CPU. In this case, the ROG Ally or the Legion Go, I think, have a chance to run it at 30 FPS. Because 8 cores, 16 threads. Here we only have 4 cores, 4 threads. So unfortunately, no way to get it anywhere close 30. The audio is also effed up due to the frame rate. So my advice is that you skip this one on Steam Deck. I don't think this is going to improve anytime soon because we're hardware limited on this one. So let's jump into the next one. God of War 3, so we got a custom configuration for this one as well. Put it like this on CPU, on GPU, something like this. Then on advanced, make sure that driver wake up delay is at 50 and 60 Hz wavelength frequency. Then in the game patches, make sure you enable all of them, basically. So you can skip cutscenes and disable anti-aliasing, so we get better performance. So let's get into the game now. Well, we're into God of War 3 now, and as you can see, well, it's an 80 PS3 game, but we're basically hardlocked at 6 FPS. Sometimes it runs at 10 FPS. It depends really on what's the humor that the emulator has. Sometimes it hits 10 FPS, but it's barely there. It runs even worse than God of War Ascension. So on this one we are again CPU limited. It maxes out a couple cores and then, wow, this is the result. So let's jump into the next one. And finally, God of War 800p. We're using a 30 FPS cap because otherwise it'll drop below 40 and it's pretty inconsistent, especially on some boss fights. Quality FSR2, you can tweak the sharpness if you want to. Then on the graphics, a mix between original and a couple things on low, so that's basically it. With the in-game FPS cap. And like this, the game looks pretty good. And you get great visuals. I tried to get 40s by lowering the settings to the minimum, but it wasn't possible, especially in a boss fight like we're going to right now. And why is that? Well, we're CPU limited in this part, so some boss fights are not great in that regard when it comes to performance. That's why I'm locking it to 30, because in those scenarios it drops below 30. Sorry, it drops below 40. So it stays pretty close to 30 and that's about it. And now we got one of those boss fights. And again, if you look at the frame time, it's more inconsistent. With unlocked frame rates, that's even worse. So yeah, my advice, again, keep it at 30. Don't bother trying to get 40s. You're not going to stay there, especially in situations like this one. So that's my advice for the game. But visually it's pretty good. and it's verified as well, and you can see why. You can play it at pretty good settings with pretty good performance. The FSR implementation is also pretty good. And well, the only game we're missing in the franchise right now on PC is God of War Ragnarok, which I'm guessing is going to come to PC eventually. Once that happens, I'm going to be here checking it out on Steam Deck. Hopefully that's a thing that's going to happen. But as of right now, we got every game except in Ragnarok, which is pretty impressive. The thing is, God of War 3 and Ascension are the ones that are unplayable because it's PS3 emulation and we require a better CPU. But if you have a ROG Ally or a Legion Go in that regard, you're going to have a way better CPU, so it will help you in those situations. But on the Steam Deck, I recommend God of War 1, God of War 2, Ghost of Sparta, Chains of Olympus, and this one. God of War 3 and Ascension, again, not worth your time on Steam Deck. And God of War Ragnarok hopefully happens soon enough. Again, I'll be here to check it out once that happens. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did taking a look at the entire God of War franchise. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. I'll leave you with Kratos punching the stranger. Thanks for watching.